Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kana and this is Jar of Fireflies. Here you will find videos all about my life as an Orthodox Jewish homeschooling mother of 3. And today we're doing a follow-up Q&A from my last series where I went through my entire conversion to Judaism story. Okay, so for the last couple of weeks, I've been posting a series of videos going through the story of my conversion to Judaism. If you didn't watch that, I will link to them there below in the comment section. But anyways, in this video, I wanted to answer some of the questions that I got during those videos, especially there at the end. You guys had a lot of really great questions, and I realized that I didn't cover these things in the videos, and they're good things to know, I guess, so we're gonna cover them now. All right, so I wrote them down in really no particular order, but they are all questions that have to do with my conversion, and then a few questions that have to do with just kind of conversion in general, because of course those questions come up. Actually, a lot on my channel, those questions come up. So anyways, let's dive right in. Okay, what in your opinion, and other than the interviews, was the hardest part of the conversion process? Oh, wow. I think that just sort of in general, being there, living in the community, being as much a part of the community as I could be, but not actually being Jewish, that was really, really hard. Just almost being sort of like in a limbo, you know, because, well, I couldn't date. I was in my 20s when this was going on, and I wanted to date, I wanted to get married and start a family, but, you know, anybody who's religious and Jewish, which is what I wanted, was not going to date me as a non-Jew, and anybody who would date me that was Jewish was not going to be religious enough for what I wanted out of a partner. So I was kind of stuck in this limbo of not being able to date and start a family and all of that sort of things. Like, that was really hard to kind of just sort of put major aspects like that of my life on hold for, you know, about a year. So that was really hard. Just sort of like, yeah, that limbo. Okay, next question. What would be your response if one of your children down the road decided Orthodoxy or even Judaism as a whole wasn't for them? Another great question. And I have gotten this question in the comments on my channel before, and I don't believe that I've really addressed it like in a video before. So we're gonna do that right now. Okay, so if one of my kids decided that being religious wasn't for them, or like a non-practicing Jew, that would not be my preference, of course, but I would absolutely love them and treat them 100% the same. I would still invite them over all the time and things like that. And I have this really beautiful example of this in my husband's parents, because they have many children, and some are religious, some are not. And the way that they talk about their children and their children's spouses, and the way that they treat their children and their children's spouses, you would never know who was religious in that family and who wasn't, based on how they speak of them and how highly they speak of them and how much they love them and how much respect they give them. It's the most beautiful thing. And that is how I hope that I would react too. Because I love my children so much, and nothing is going to come between me and how I love my children. And that includes our religion, or lack thereof in that case, if that was to happen, God forbid. And this is really the same thing if they decided to be a totally different religion. Again, this would not be what I would want for them. And I do think that it would probably hurt a lot more if they decided to be a totally different religion, just like what my parents had to deal with when I chose to be a different religion. It's like, how to phrase this? It's like, kind of like the death of a dream, you know, where you have this thought of what your child's life is going to be like, and what their future is going to look like, and what your future is going to look like because of that. And then that's gone, you know? So like, for example, my parents thought that I would have this lovely Catholic wedding, have babies and baptize them at infancy and things like that. And that did not happen with me. You know, I got married in a synagogue. There was nothing Catholic about my service at all, other than the fact that there was a Catholic priest in attendance because my uncle was a Catholic priest. And, you know, when I had my babies, they had a different kind of a ceremony. You know, my boys had the Brit Milah, my daughter had a baby naming ceremony, but there was no baptism. My children have never been baptized. So there would be that kind of a loss of what I thought would happen. And that is something that kind of is part of life. You know, I had it when my son was diagnosed with diabetes and celiac, because I went through that kind of a grieving period of where I lost the future that I thought my son would have. But the future we have is beautiful. And so if that makes sense, I think there would be a little bit of a grieving period for me, but I would love and respect them 100%. All right, so the next question is, have you been accepted by the community, being that you converted and you weren't born into it? Yes, 100%. There are plenty of people who've converted in my community, and you really can't tell like who's converted and who's not, unless like people just talk about it, because we all just kind of blend in. I have never felt less than. If anything, I have felt more than. Converts are actually held in a really high esteem in Judaism because we chose it and we knew what we were getting into when we chose it, and we took it all upon ourselves knowing what was on the other side. I went from the fast food and the cheeseburgers and all that to having to pay a lot more money for kosher food and not being able to go out to restaurants and cooking at home all the time. I went from being able to go out on the weekends and kind of do whatever I wanted to having to observe Shabbat. Now, of course, I absolutely love these things and I am very happy that they are in my life, and I 100% would not trade that. I think that's obvious by this point if you've been watching my videos for a while, but there, I knowing that other side, there's like something to be said for people who choose this life. And so because of that, converts are held in this really high esteem in Judaism. So yeah, totally accepted. I never feel any different really than anybody else. And there's also a lot of Jews who have come from a less religious background or a non-religious, like a secular background, who then become religious later in life. We call that a Baal Tshuva. It's like a returning to Judaism. A lot of those experiences are kind of the same, where we can all sit around and be like, oh yeah, you remember Taco Bell? You remember wearing blue jeans and whatever. So yeah, we just all kind of blend in. But yeah, I don't ever feel any different, and I am 100% accepted by my community, and I think that's fantastic. Okay, so the next question is, I know you've said before that you're Sephardi. Is that part of the theology of the branch of Judaism you converted into, or just the culture? I actually converted in an Ashkenaz community. For anybody who doesn't know, most of the Jews, about 90% of the Jews in America, are Ashkenaz, and that means that they come from those European roots. So the Sephardi Jews were expelled from Spain about 500 years ago, and they settled in a lot of Northern African and Middle Eastern countries. So that's all of your Moroccan Jews, your Syrian Jews, all of those sorts of Jews. So those are the Sephardi Jews, and we have slightly different traditions in some ways. Generally speaking, it's all the same. We observe the same everything. We observe Shabbat, we keep kosher, all of these sorts of things. We have the same holidays, but there might be slight differences in some of the intricacies of some of those observances. So for example, I can use glass plates for meat and dairy, whereas my Ashkenaz friends have to have separate plates for meat and dairy. I can eat rice on Passover. My Ashkenaz friends cannot. Like, there's just some little things like that. All right, so anyways, back to the question. I converted in an Ashkenaz community. My rabbi is Ashkenaz. My husband is Sephardi. Now, because I was a convert, I really wasn't one or the other. But when I converted and actually had this conversation with my rabbi, I was like, do I get to pick? Like, what's the deal? And he told me that because he was Ashkenaz and because I was in an Ashkenaz community, that I should follow Ashkenaz customs. Now, when I got married, when I got engaged to my husband, who is Sephardi, at that point, my rabbi said, you are Sephardi. So at this point, I 100% took on my husband's customs and learned the differences from him, and asking questions to his family so that I could learn, how I needed to observe a little bit differently to observe those Sephardi customs. And so from the moment that I was engaged, I was Sephardi. Now, normally I think that if an Ashkenaz person was to marry a Sephardi person, they wouldn't take those customs on until the actual wedding day. I'm not totally sure on that though, but because I did not have really my own customs, I took on his as soon as we knew that we were going to get married. So I hope that answers the question for you there. Okay, the next question. When I left the Reform community, did I talk to my rabbi or anything? Yes, I did. So when I came to the Orthodox community, the Orthodox rabbi that I was working with at the very beginning, he actually told me that I should go and talk to my Reform rabbi about this. So I met my Reform rabbi for coffee and I told him what I wanted to do, that I wanted to go through an Orthodox conversion, that I wanted to practice Orthodox Judaism. He was very accepting of this. He said that, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, this hurts a little bit, which I totally get, because again, it's kind of that, without exactly rejecting, I'm not like straight out rejecting how he practices Judaism, but it is kind of a rejection, because I'm saying your way isn't for me, I'm going to do it this way. Again, I would never tell him that I think that what he's doing is wrong. He's still 100% Jewish, it doesn't matter, but it's just not how I wanted to practice Judaism. I wanted to do things the way that I felt was the most right. Anyways, so he did tell me at that point, though, that he really saw this from the beginning. He's like, I saw this coming. And I was like, you didn't think you should tell me. But yeah, I guess he saw that I was a very traditional person and that I just kind of do things 120% all the time. So I guess he could kind of see this coming. He was not surprised. But yes, we did sit down and have this conversation and basically parted on very good terms. All right, so the next question is, do you miss Christmas or other holidays you used to celebrate before your conversion? Not for the Jesus-y stuff, obviously, but more the season and traditions. So this one has changed over time. At first, yes, like when I first was kind of on this journey and going through like my Reform conversion, I was, kind of missing the Christmas tree and things like that. My Christmas tree was very special to me because I had hand painted every single ornament on my Christmas tree and it was covered in ornaments. So I kind of sorted through those. I gave a lot of those to my family that is still Christian, and some of them I just got rid of that weren't, maybe as nice as others. But so these days I totally don't miss it at all. And I think the big difference now is that I have my family, because when my family and I are celebrating our traditions and our holidays together, like, my life is so full. I don't miss it at all. Christmas rolls around and I'm like, why is the store closed? And I'm like, oh yeah, there's that big holiday that everybody around here celebrates but me. So yeah, these days I totally don't miss it at all. But in the beginning, it was hard. And I think that was more maybe missing the family time being together and that sort of thing, because I didn't have that. I was sort of, I was just alone and single and all of that. But really, by the time that I got to my Orthodox conversion, I was pretty past all of that. So even though I was single then, I still was pretty past all of it, because I was just so busy with life at the time and had kind of said goodbye, I guess, to Christmas and all those other holidays many years ago. All right, hope that answers that question there for you. All right, now this next question has been asked by many of you, and it was, how did my family react to me converting to Judaism? And I kind of briefly answered, I think, to a few of you guys in the comment section there, and I'm gonna expand a little bit on the answer that I gave you guys before. So what I told you guys before, and I still totally stand by this, is that it's not my story to tell. I don't feel comfortable really sharing their stories here. I'm fine sharing my stories, but these are my stories. And without asking them for permission first, I don't feel that it would be right to share their stories here. I totally respect my family. I respect their privacy, and I wouldn't want to infringe on that at all. That said, my parents were definitely hurt at first for all the reasons that I talked about, how I would feel if my children chose a different religion. But at this point, and we're quite a many years later, my family is very happy with the life that I lead. They're very happy with how I am treated within my religion. They see what a wonderful life I have, what a loving and respectful husband that I have, my beautiful children that I have. They see that my community is very loving and that we take care of each other, and they think it's a really beautiful thing. Do they wish that I was still Catholic? 100%. Of course they do. But are they okay that I'm Jewish? Yeah, they are. So yeah, their preference, of course, is that I would become Catholic again, but I think they also kind of know that's not really gonna happen. And like I said, they're really happy with how I'm living my life and how my life is, and they're cool with that. So that's as much as I'm going to say on that topic, and I appreciate everyone's understanding on me wanting to be respectful of their privacy. Okay, next question. What was the reaction of my Reform friends when I decided to become Orthodox? This varied quite a bit. Okay, now I feel differently about sharing the friends' reactions because I'm not calling any particular friend out. I'm obviously not going to mention any names or anything like that. There's no way to know really who I'm talking about here, but okay, so that's why I'm going to answer this question a little bit more. Okay, so anyways, how my Reform friends reacted. It varied a lot. Okay, so I had most of my friends were like, okay, great, whatever, you know. And then I had other people who were very like, I guess they were like anti-Orthodox. And we could go through all the whys of why this could be occurring, but there are some Reformed Jews who really don't seem to like the Orthodox Jews. Don't totally understand this one myself. My guess is that it stems from that kind of feeling like you're doing it wrong because of the ways that somebody else is doing it. But I think we just have to do what's best for us. So that's my 2 cents. But anyways, so I did have some people who were like, just not gonna be friends with me anymore. Like that was it. They were done. And that was disappointing. But that kind of showed me who they were, that they weren't really a true friend if they weren't willing to be my friend because I changed how I practice our religion. And I can't respect somebody for that too much. So there was that. So yeah, all across the gamut, lots of different things. All right, next question. How can I convert to Judaism? I get asked this question a lot and it's going to vary. It's going to depend a lot on your personal situation. So what I can say is the first step you would want to do is find a rabbi who will work with you on conversion. Not all rabbis do conversions, so you need to find a rabbi who does conversions. And you will probably have to move into a Jewish community. It's very rare that someone could convert without living in a Jewish community. So you'll really need to do that at some point, and you can talk to the rabbi about that. I wouldn't recommend getting up and moving until you have found that community that will work with you. I would definitely go and visit and things like that. Make sure it's a good fit for you also. And that rabbi that you're working with will help put you on the path to what you need to do to convert based on, again, your situation and your knowledge level and all of that. So basically call a rabbi and plan on moving eventually. I have been asked, how long does it take to convert? And again, this completely varies. I had one friend who converted. It took her about 6 months, but she spent that entire 6 months. She packed up and moved to Israel and learned in a seminary for 6 months and was able to convert 6 months later. My process was a little bit over a year, but I came into it with a lot of knowledge first. I met someone else who was 6 years into their conversion and still hadn't converted yet, but I've kind of felt like maybe they were happy being in that spot. I don't know. So there's a lot of variety in there as far as how long it takes to convert, but I would not plan on less than a year. For the vast majority of people, it is longer than a year because they want to see you go through that whole cycle of holidays for your own learning, and also being in the process for over a year. It helps to show them like you're not just here because it sounds like fun and you'll be gone in 2 months. Okay, so the next question is, what books have helped you along the way? That's a hard one because the best learning that I had was through conversations with people and with just like general experience, like experiential learning, you know, sitting at services with a friend who would point in the book and say, this is what we're doing now. And then like maybe later we might look at the book and talk about it some more. Just getting a siddur and a prayer book and then reading the prayers and studying them and reading all the little footnotes in my prayer book to gain some insights as to what these things mean. Things like that. I will tell you the major topics that I covered were just that kind of Jewish life in general, the practical aspects of Jewish living, and the laws of keeping kosher, the laws of kashrut. So those were definitely really important things. And then studying the Siddur and knowing what to say for my prayers and why, like kind of getting into those. So if you had to just buy one book, I would start with a Siddur. And if you'd like me to recommend one, let me know in the comments and I will pull a few links for you guys. I have a great one that I use as a Sephardi Jew, and there's another one that I can recommend for you as an Ashkenazi Jew. And you know what, I'll just try to pull those links and put them in the description box below if you're interested. So I'll put a link to both of those books. Anyways. Okay, so those were some of the biggest questions that I got. There's one more topic that I would like to cover, but I think I'm going to cover that in a separate video. So, and that has to do with modesty in the mikveh. So stay tuned for that for sure. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss that. And hey, if you're this far into the video, you should hit that like button because you're obviously having a good time. All right. Okay, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in my next upload.